day that I imagine is actually quite hard for many people, you know, in Gaza and in Israel. But particularly, let's talk about Israel. You've now got the ceasefire that has kicked off 3 hours late this morning for reasons that I think are all to do with the pre-announcement of which hostages would be released today from Gaza. But it's happened. Let me just ask you, what do you think the mood and sense is in Israel? Is it torn between fear of the future, jubilation, and some would say they're not happy with the ceasefire at all?
The ceasefire agreement is a tragedy for almost every Israeli. It is a deeply grievous cost that is being paid. The terrorists of Hamas know that it hurts Israelis, it hurts the Jewish people around the world, it hurts people who believe in freedom and Western values all over the world. And only 3 names have been declared so far. One of them is a British national. It's Emily Damari. I've had the privilege of meeting her.
She's the only British national remaining,
who's alive there. Now, Emily is incarcerated, for 450 days. The last time we heard that she was alive was March 2024. Her name is on the list. God willing, she is physically living. We don't even know that. I've met Mandy. She's originally from Beckenham in Kent as a young woman. She met and married a young Israeli and brought up a British-Israeli family on the kibbutz in the south, right near the Gaza border. And it was that terrible morning, October the 7th, when Emily was taken brutally. She was shot and survived. Her dog was killed. The keys to her car were stolen. She was bundled into the back of her own car and driven into Gaza. And let's make no moral equivalence between who is being released on one side and who is being released on the other. In the past few hours, we have been handed these 734 lists of people from Palestinian...
That's 734 Palestinians, is it, who will be released over the next 42 days?
Correct. Convicted criminals. And among them is Ahmad Barghouti, a close aide and cousin of Marwan Barghouti, sentenced to 13 life terms for leading what's called a murder machine that carried out attacks in 12 different Israeli places like the seafood markets. These are attacks on Israeli civilians.
So there must be a sense, Jonny, there must be a sense of the mission of the Israeli Prime Minister, Netanyahu, was to eliminate Hamas. That hasn't happened. Is that presumably people are just terrified that they'll come back again another day?
And indeed, the October the 7th tragedy was precipitated by a hostage and prisoner release. One of the prisoners that was released was Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of October the 7th, in exchange for one Israeli prisoner, meaning well, not a prisoner, a hostage, Gilad Shalit.
Who was a soldier, I think.
A soldier, yes, a conscript soldier. And this is going to happen again. It is a deep and grievous cost. There's another element to this, which is that Israel has lost 800 soldiers in this battle, both north and south. And the families of the IDF soldiers have campaigned together, protested outside Knesset, saying Jewish blood is not cheap. And they don't mean just Jewish blood. IDF soldiers come from every community because Israel is a multi-ethnic society. There are Jews and Muslims and Christians and Druze. Everyone serves in the Israeli army.
But Jonny, people will be saying reports, admittedly, from Hamas themselves, the so-called health reports, the department in Gaza, that 47,000 lives is enough. Now, I think Israel acknowledges at least 17,000 of those, they reckon, were combatants, but lots of civilians have been killed in Gaza, and therefore the pressure was inevitable. And it seems Donald Trump applied the pressure for the ceasefire. I mean, blood has been spilled everywhere, really,
yes,
isn't it?
The numbers have been debunked, not least by Andrew Fox of the Henry Jackson Society, and it is a very low ratio of citizens against combatants. I mean, it doesn't make it better, but the number is not 47,000. It is an oft-repeated, UNRWA-sponsored lie.
Which is what I was very clear to make out.
It's best to say that.
There is nevertheless a proportionality, of course, with this, which I think even Israel themselves accept, that if you're going after, terrorists in this situation who are basically hiding themselves amongst refugees, there's going to be a high price. But that proportionality, which is accepted, if you like, by Israel as a consequence of the war, I suppose it's come to a head simply because of the high numbers that are involved. This is simply people recognising that there seemed to be no end to eliminating Hamas because it was an impossible deal. We had Alistair Burt on yesterday, former Minister of the Middle East, saying actually the Israeli cabinet and Prime Minister were being told to eliminate Hamas is actually an impossible dream that you can't do.
Look, it has been reduced to a guerrilla organisation, if that's the word. And even the meeting in Doha between the highest level of Israeli society, the Shabak, which is the Homeland Security, and indeed Mossad, both heads are there. They are meeting representatives of Hamas, and even that is an intelligence mission because all the kind of chiefs of Hamas have been taken out, like Ismail Haniyeh, who was taken out in Iran, Yahya Sinjar, who was the Gazan leader. So the people that they're meeting will give them a drill down, some kind of organizational understanding of who they are dealing with. Meanwhile, Israel is still losing soldiers on the battlefield. And as Andrew Fox, who I've spoken to many, many times, who is a professional soldier, he knows the difference between who is a professional soldier and who is a conscript. And a lot of these boys, and indeed some girls as well, have been lost. They are teenagers. They were hairdressers yesterday or small business owners, and they are urged to fight in an urban environment, which not even five-star generals have much experience of. And tragically, as Andrew has told me, this will be the growth area as the world becomes more urbanized and Islamist terror moves from rural environments into urban places.
Okay,
it's the future. Tragically, this is the future of war.
Whilst we're making good use of the time, I want to just explore a little bit with you about where the ceasefire goes. So we've got this first stage, 42 days. You've got some members, and indeed Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister himself, saying, if I'm given cause to, I'm going to attack again. Stage one is only stage one, but he's got members of his cabinet saying, come what may, you should attack after you've got these hostages back. What prospect do you think this ceasefire has of holding?
I think we've got to try and understand how many of the hostages will be released who are living. No one is left behind. That is the Israeli philosophy. No one of their citizens, be whatever religion they are, whether they've been rescued or indeed negotiated out, it doesn't matter their ethnicity if they are Israeli citizens. And interestingly enough, the old man Oded Lifshitz, who's 84 years old, he's the oldest surviving, I say surviving, hostage.
Okay.
And there is a whole family, the Bois family, who were taken completely, including a 9-month-old baby. And that child, who is now, I think, 2 years old...
spent more of his life as a hostage.
Yeah. And God willing, he hasn't been taken in by a family and started to be radicalised as an enemy of the Jewish people, for example. I mean, that is one of the thoughts going on. We literally don't know whether these people are dead or alive.
So
but one thing's for sure is I do think that this time, because of what happened with Yahya Sinwar, that these terrorists that have been released will be got after, will be chased around, and
so no place to hide.
There will be no place to hide.
But
no.
And do you think that bodes well, that you'll actually get to stage 3 of this ceasefire, which is when you start talking about reconstruct and the future?
Yes.
But no real talk, probably too early, of what a future security of Israel settlement looks like. Do you know, are we talking two-state solution? This is precisely what Alistair Burt was saying. We've never really tried it, so we've got to try it.
There is no one on the Palestinian side that Israel can meaningfully negotiate with. the Palestinian Authority is on the edge of a possible civil war of control between Hamas and the PA. There are 3 zones in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. Zone C is built for Israelis. Religious Jews usually create towns and cities in those environments. Zone B apparently is designed for Palestinian elders of the community to run, and Zone A is under the auspices of the Palestinian Authority, and that is where 19 years into a 4-year term, the man who refuses to go and die, Abu Mazen, who is I think 89 years old, is still approximately running the tyranny that's in that area.
But we also heard yesterday that there's 57 Arab states who, you know, would be, if you like, the push to drive for a 2-state solution that secured Israel's future as well. I mean, do you take any comfort from that?
They're a bit scarce, let's just say that. I mean, when this first happened, I started doing special shows here, how to make peace in the Middle East, and I pled with the Gulf states, the Abraham Accords signatory states, for example, the UAE and Bahrain, to be involved in the mediation of the build.
Were, of course, what was actually a lot of progress with the relationship with Israel that was taking place, and some argue that progress prompted Iran and Hamas to launch the attack on Israel in the first place. I'll just give some context.
Well, that is tragically true. The Palestinians, they felt, were being ignored, and so they very much put themselves back on the agenda with this brutal terror attack, this pogrom, this disaster of the morning of October the 7th. And what Trump was trying to do, and what he has succeeded in doing, is creating a normalization, which is on the agenda, between the UAE and Bahrain, that Saudi understands this, but there will have to be a major security arrangement, a deal with the Saudis and the United States for them to come on board. And the Saudis keep on saying that there must be some kind of settlement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I'm not sure why they say that, because they don't like the Palestinians. They don't see them even as fellow Arabs, but it is part of their modus operandi in order to exact some kind of price out of America.
Let's just keeping an eye on the clock there. Barry's just said, I think he's saying, I live in Northern Ireland, Johnny, and he lives in Northern Ireland, and know how you feel. It's hard to watch murderers being released, and I'm exacerbated by seeing some of them now in our government here. That's what Barry. If you'd like to join the conversation, 0344 499 1000.